Would you like to become the most popular person at work? Would you like to learn how to develop a magnetic personality and seduce anyone you desire?
Well then, you're in precisely the right place. There is one simple concept which 99% of people know, but lack the self-control to benefit from. It is the first fundamental technique in dealing with people. Lesson 1. If you want to gather honey, don't kick over the beehive. Let's begin with a quick overview of the story of New York's most notorious criminal.
On May 7, 1931, the most sensational manhunt New York City had ever known had come to its climax. 150 policemen and detectives laid siege to the top-floor hideaway of Crowley the Cop Killer, a.k.a. Two Gun Crowley. For more than an hour, one of New York's finest residential areas reverberated with the crack of gunfire. While the police were firing into his apartment, Crowley wrote a letter addressed, "To whom it may concern, under my coat is a weary heart, but a kind one that would do nobody any harm." A short time before this, a policeman walked up to Crowley's car and said, "Let me see your license." Without saying a word, Crowley drew his gun and cut the policeman down with a shower of lead. And that was the killer who wrote that very letter.
The point of the story is this. Two Gun Crowley didn't blame himself for anything. Is that an unusual attitude among criminals? If you think so, listen to this.
Lewis Laws, who was warden of New York's infamous Sing Sing prison for many years, declared that few criminals regard themselves as bad men. They can tell you why they had to crack a safe or be quick on the trigger finger. Most of them attempt by a form of reasoning, fallacious or logical, to justify their anti-social acts, even to themselves.
So when you and I are tempted to criticize someone tomorrow, hesitate for a moment and think of all the men and women locked behind bars today and realize that wrongdoers will blame everyone and everything but themselves. Before letting your anger get the better of you, take that moment to remember that criticisms are equivalent to homing pigeons. No matter where they are released, they will return back home. Let's realize in that moment that the person we are going to correct and condemn will seek to justify themselves and condemn us in return. Take, for example, Abraham Lincoln.
On the morning of April 15, 1865, Abraham Lincoln lay dying after a fatal gun wound from an assassin in Ford's Theater. As Secretary of War Stanton put it, "There lies the most perfect ruler of men that the world has ever seen." Yet Abraham Lincoln was not always a perfect man. Once upon a time, when Abraham Lincoln was a young man, he not only indulged in criticism, but he wrote letters and poems intentionally ridiculing and humiliating people. One of these letters aroused a resentment that burned for a lifetime. In the autumn of 1842, Lincoln ridiculed a politician by the name of James Shields, who consequently challenged Lincoln to a duel. Then, on the appointed day, both men met on at the Mississippi River, prepared to fight to the death. The duel was stopped at the last minute by the intervention of their seconds. Never again did Lincoln ridicule anyone.
When Abraham Lincoln heard Mrs. Lincoln criticize his enemies, he would reply, "Don't criticize them. They are just what we would be under similar circumstances." And yet if any man had occasion to criticize, it would be Lincoln. Here is one illustration during his Civil War efforts.
The day after the Battle of Gettysburg in 1863, when the enemy army was pinned against an impassable river, trapped and surrounded by all sides, Lincoln saw this golden, heaven-sent opportunity, the opportunity to capture the enemy army and end the war in one stroke. So Lincoln ordered his general Meade to attack immediately. Lincoln telegraphed his orders and even sent a special messenger to Meade demanding immediate action. And what did General Meade do? He did the very opposite of what he was told to do. He directly violated Lincoln's orders, hesitated, and procrastinated. He telegraphed all manner of excuses, refusing point-blank to attack Lee and his army. The opportunity inevitably passed, and in bitter disappointment, Lincoln sat down and wrote Meade this letter. Keep in mind that at this period of his life, Lincoln was extremely conservative and restrained in his phraseology. So the words in this letter were tantamount to the severest rebuke. My dear General, I do not believe you appreciate the magnitude of the misfortune involved in Lee's escape. As it is, The war will be prolonged indefinitely. It would be unreasonable to expect, and I do not expect that you can now effect much. Your golden opportunity is gone, and I am distressed immeasurably because of it. What do you suppose Meade did when he read the letter? Meade never saw that letter. Abraham Lincoln never sent it. It was found among his papers after his death.
Perhaps after writing that letter, Lincoln looked out of the window and said to himself, "It is easy enough for me to sit here in the quiet of the White House and order Meade to attack. But if I had seen as much blood as Meade has seen, maybe I wouldn't be so anxious to attack either. If I send this letter, it will relieve my feelings, but it will make Meade try to justify himself. It will make him condemn me. It will arouse hard feelings, impair all his further usefulness as a commander, and perhaps force him to resign from the army." For Lincoln had learned by bitter experience that sharp criticisms and rebukes almost invariably end in futility and resentment. The key lessons from this story are as follows. Criticism is futile because it puts a person on the defensive and usually makes him strive to justify himself. Criticism is dangerous because it wounds a person's precious pride, hurts his sense of importance, and arouses resentment. The resentment that criticism engenders can demoralize employees, family members, and friends and still not correct the situation that has been condemned. You can find examples of the futility of criticism bristling on 1,000 pages of history. Consider, for instance, the famous quarrel between Theodore Roosevelt and President Taft, a quarrel that split the Republican Party.
Theodore Roosevelt blamed Taft, but did President Taft blame himself? Of course not. Dozens upon dozens of Roosevelt's criticisms didn't persuade Taft that he was wrong. It merely made Taft strive to justify himself and reiterate with tears in his eyes, "I don't see how I could have done any differently from what I have."
Venting your anger through criticism is akin to stoking the flames of your own pyre. The next time you find yourself in a similar circumstance, hesitate on your natural human instinct to be impulsive. Take a moment and exercise self-control. Don't let a hot temper control your actions. The good thing is, the more you exercise control over your emotions, the more stress-free and happier your life will be. Happiness is an inside job. Don't assign anyone else that much power over your life. We all have people in our lives who we would like to change, regulate, and improve. But from a purely selfish standpoint, why not begin on yourself? It's immeasurably more profitable than trying to change others, and also a lot less risky.
As Confucius put it, don't complain about the snow on your neighbor's roof when your own doorstep is unclean. Any fool can criticize, condemn, and complain, and most fools do. But it takes character and self-control to be understanding and forgiving. A great man shows his greatness by the way he treats little men. I will speak ill of no man, and speak all the good I know of everybody.
Here's an example of how you can consciously decide to take control of your emotions. Imagine for a second that you're driving home, and the car in front of you is driving particularly slowly. Before you react impulsively, try to put yourself in their shoes. Maybe that driver is heading to a party with an exceptionally fragile, customized birthday cake. Thinking like this is not only a lot more profitable and intriguing, it breeds sympathy, tolerance, and kindness. God himself does not propose to judge a man until the end of his days. So why should you or I? Here's a short summary. If criminals don't blame themselves for anything, what about the people with whom you and I come in contact? Criticism is futile, dangerous, and doesn't make circumstances any better. Criticism cannot change people or make them admit their faults. Hint: sincere appreciation and encouragement is a better approach. Adopt a mindset of empathy, tolerance, and kindness. We are creatures of emotion, my friend, not of pure logic and rationality.
As John Wanamaker once confessed, it is foolish to scold. I have enough trouble overcoming my own limitations without fretting over the fact that God has not seen fit to distribute evenly the gift of intelligence.
Thus, the first fundamental technique in dealing with people: don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Your confidence, wealth, and romantic life all depend, to no small extent, upon your skill in dealing with people. Sad thing is, I can tell you how critical these lessons are, and still 95% of people will sit there, click on the next video in their feed, and forget this video by tomorrow. If you're a part of the 5% and care enough about your personal development, make sure you put in conscious mental energy in refraining from criticism, condemnation, and complaining. It's that easy to win. So, are you a winner or a loser? Choose. Only winners allowed.